Hadouken! Welcome back to another episode of the Bros, you knows. I'm your host, Passionate, and here with me, the broshi to my brario.
Emotional.
We're so excited to be joined by MMA legend, Anderson Silva. Anderson Silva, what's up, Spider Bro?
Hey, Passionate. I'm like totally bueno.
That's great, Anderson. We have to ask you, who do you have, Aldo or McGregor?
Aldo Mecha like zapatos. They're más o menos bueno. And McGregor, man, I really like him in Moulin Rouge, but in Star Wars, he was a Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Actually, Anderson, we were talking about the UFC fighters and, like the big epic fight.
Oh, epic fight. That actually reminds me of like a documentary I watched recently. It was about a small mining town of Prosperity, Arizona. Some toxins got into like the water, and when the spiders around the town started drinking it, they got like big and swole, bro. And it's kind of like the same stuff that happened with the water at my gym. Anyways, I digress. The Spider Bros, they started like training in Muay Thai and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and like they were testing out like their skills and stuff, man. Like they were climbing up like, houses and power lines and stuff, and they got like really jacked, bro. And then a couple of the Spider Bros, they went on like a protein binge, and they accidentally ate a couple of the humans, and like, man, they like freaked out, dude. Like, all of a sudden this evil mining engineer teamed up with like this evil town sheriff, and like they rallied the people to go start attacking like the Spider Bros, basically punishing all of them for just like the actions of like a few spiders. And there was an epic fight. It was like really sad. You should really donate to their cause, Passionate and Emotional.
Yeah, we will donate to no such cause. Mainly because you're describing the movie Eight-Legged Freaks, starring David Arquette, which I think most people David forget. He used to have a career.
I'm so sorry, bros. Seriously, ever since my last fight, like I've been hanging out with Nick Diaz a lot, and he keeps giving me like these tasty brownies, but man, things happen and I really don't know what is going on, bros.
Hey, it's totally cool, Anderson. You're a legend, and we appreciate what you've done with the sport. And it looks like you did find the cause. Going green. All right, we're just gonna get right into it. We are the Bros, you knows. All right, Passionate, Emotional, as always. Thank you.
Yeah, man. Those are some cool dudes. I'm glad they got back together. That was good to see.
Yeah, it was kind of sad that they left, even though, I felt like that video was a little overwrought. It made it seem like it was like this big epic breakup. It lasted the duration of the video, and then like they got back immediately.
Like 2 minutes long. It was, man. Oh well.
This is a really, really exciting week for UFC fans, MMA fans.
Possibly the biggest week ever.
Yeah.
For MMA in general.
This is crazy. You got 3 different fights.
So the first night is a Fight Pass card.
Okay.
It's Thursday night. This Thursday's Fight Pass.
And then the next one is the finale for Tough, right?
Yes, on Fox Sports 1, I think. That's the Chad Mendes versus Frankie Edgar headlining that. I guess tonight we'll find out. Wednesday night is the Tough finale, so we'll find out on Wednesday who's fighting on Friday in the Tough finale. And then Saturday, obviously.
2 big fights, and our segment is we're gonna cover mainly Conor and Aldo, and that's what everybody's talking about. That's
the
like
draw.
the big fight. Weidman Rockhold, that may end up being like the best fight of the night. So.
Weidman Rockhold I would tune in just for that.
Weidman is he's a lot like
GSP in the way he carries himself. Very
Workmanlike.
yeah, workmanlike. You know, give me a fight. I'll go out there and I'll do what I do, and then afterwards I'm gonna go back to my family and then train and do that stuff.
The next guy.
Yeah, and so we'll talk about that a little bit later, but we're gonna get right into it with Conor and Aldo. For the purposes of this podcast, I'm gonna be taking Aldo's position, kind of breaking down sort of his strengths, his weaknesses, and his path to victory. And David's going to take Conor's position. David has been a fan of this guy since he looked like he could be in a Neutrogena commercial. I mean, this guy has been a fan with him back when he was fighting in the little leagues. Over in Ireland, big dreams about being a UFC champion, and he was doing MMA over there, sort of. He also had an amateur boxing career.
Yeah.
So so I mean, let's just get into it. I'm gonna talk a little bit about Conor too. There's just like so much about his game. I love him. I mean, if you've listened to our Bros before, we've asked repeatedly. We want the Notorious to be on our show. He's one of the Bros we know. We love him. He brings so much to the sport. He's one of those superstars like Ronda Rousey, where he sort of transcended MMA. People that don't follow fighting, they know who Conor McGregor is, and he's just fun. He's must-see television.
Every single time. His interviews are must-see television.
Well, whenever you have those UFC big press conferences, you sit there and it's always such a treat for the fans. You're like, oh man, how often do we get to see all of these champions and all of these top contenders together? And what are they going to say? Now you tune in, and you're just like, this is the Conor McGregor show,
right,
and there just happens to be other champions sitting behind him.
Yeah. It's all about Conor.
All right, so. Go ahead, break down Conor a little bit for our listeners. What is he known for? What does he like to do?
So, I mean, Conor's MO has always been his slick stand-up. And he's a very unorthodox man on his feet. He's quick, he's strong, and he throws strikes from a lot of different angles. Not a lot of guys do stuff like that. He throws autobombs out of the blue. Like, I mean, actually, I think he's done a few fights in a row where right after the glove tap, he'll, throw an autobomb or, some kind of crazy spinning kick just because, like, what the hell, I'm Conor McGregor, might as well do this. So he's very...
But no. You say that.
Yeah.
It's like, what the hell, I'm Conor McGregor, and that's what he wants you to think, too.
Because
like, I'm doing this, I'm showing up. Right?
Yeah.
It's not. All of those spinning kicks, those aren't kill shots. That's setting people up.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing, like, he looks very flashy, but he's not doing it for the sake of flash. He's doing it. He makes his opponent think twice about everything because of all like the unorthodox ways he throws strikes and throws kicks, and so for the most part, his opponents are just completely off balance for the entire fight because you don't know. He doesn't throw things like normal fighters throw things. He doesn't throw what normal fighters throw, and he just keeps his opponents off balance the entire time. So it's impressive to watch.
What do you see him? What is he going to be able to do against Aldo? What do you see as some of his strengths and things that he's going to be able to do well?
So Aldo is definitely the best striker Conor has ever faced. He's never faced a striker like Aldo. So I think one thing Conor is going to have to do is he is going to have to use his length advantage against Aldo, and I'm not going to say pick his shots because Conor. It's not the pick your shots kind of guy.
No, he's a pressure guy.
He's a pressure guy. He likes to hit you, but he's going to have to avoid getting in too close.
But that's what Conor does, though.
Yeah, no, exactly. So I think it works. But I think something Conor needs to do is use because he does have a significant like reach advantage, and I think if he uses that correctly, I think it could be actually. And I'm not going to say easy fight for him, but I think it'd be a clear victory for him.
So you're saying Conor should stay back, use distance, and let Aldo come to him?
Use his distance, at least for the first couple rounds. Let Aldo be the one to try to chase him, and then he can flip it around in round 3, and then turn into the aggressor.
That's interesting. That would definitely go against everything we've ever seen Conor ever do.
Exactly.
He's a pressure fighter, and I think his biggest strength is that he's a pressure fighter. Everything he does, everything that he's good at, is because he puts pressure on you. I mean, what is the Conor game plan? Meet you in the middle, control the middle.
He'll use those spinning kicks that you were talking about to push his opponent back.
How often do we see his opponent with a back to the cage? That's where Conor knows how to get a person there, and he is so good. Once he gets there, he can tie you up, he gets you in the clinch. There's so many different weapons that he has there.
As a big fan of McGregor, I'm going to have to disagree with you. I think if he sits back and lets Aldo control the octagon for the first few rounds, I think that plays right into the champion's hands.
I'm just going to highlight a couple things that I've noticed Conor McGregor do, and feel free to jump in. One of the things that Conor McGregor is so good at, and this is a Filipino boxing move, it's what they call the bolo punch.
Yeah.
But he kind of throws that uppercut, but he moves to the side.
On the outside angle of the lead leg of the opponent.
And it's a very weird shot, but what it does is it kind of freezes the opponent, and what happens then is he sets up what is by far his most devastating strike, his straight left. By doing this, he kind of pushes the guy back, and he lines up straight
to his opponent's center line.
And he's able to throw his left maximum power, and just he's ended a lot of guys with this punch. Another thing that he likes to do, he'll kind of go in, and he likes to throw that roundhouse or flying knee, get the opponent's head to move off that center line. This is something that TJ Dillashaw is so good at doing. But they throw that knee or they throw that roundhouse, and as soon as the head moves off that center line, same thing. Crack him with the straight left. And he's hurt so many guys doing this. He's ended fights doing this. If he's able to pressure Aldo, and he's able to land some of those patented straight lefts that he's been able to do, man, Aldo's in for a tough night for sure.
You do have a good point on the pressuring, because if you go back and watch that, the last Mendes versus Aldo fight, I mean, Mendes is not exactly a counter striker either, and he had some success on his feet with Aldo, even though Aldo is, by the numbers, a much better striker than Mendes is. And Mendes still was able to hold his own up there on the feet. He lost the fight eventually, but for the most part, he did fairly well up there.
I was listening to Chael Sonnen. We're both fans of Chael Sonnen.
He has an excellent podcast. You're welcome. And Chael, you're welcome to come on to Bros whenever. We love you. Anyways, he had George St. Pierre on that show.
Described this fight, and he said that he thinks that this fight reminds him a lot of Chael Sonnen's fight against Anderson Silva, where you had this unbeaten champion that was just steamrolling over everybody. And then you had this really brash, trash-talking guy that was the only person in the room that believed he was better than the champion and legitimately believed it. And George St. Pierre said that, if it weren't for that one mistake in the fifth round, you had it. You had that that victory. And then Zahabi, TriStar coach,
Great coach, by the way.
he was doing a little Q&A breaking down this Aldo McGregor fight, and he actually he took that a step further, saying that that was true for a fight that would have happened back in July. That would have been true then.
Right.
But there's a lot of things that have changed since then. One of the things that changed most notably is Conor fought. He fought Mendes. Aldo hasn't done anything since then. So Aldo now has tape on Conor. Not that that's a significant advantage, but the theory behind it is that, and we both watched that fight. It was a close fight. Chad Mendes wasn't losing that fight against McGregor.
He was winning that fight until he stood back up.
And he had a lot of success being able to take him down, and a couple different things. When I talk about Aldo, I'll start breaking in some of those weaknesses I think McGregor has in this game. There's now tape on him, and Aldo has that tape, and McGregor didn't necessarily look super great on that tape.
No.
And here, so now you have that. You have the fact that McGregor has shown maybe he has some weaknesses. He ended up winning and in quite impressive fashion.
But also in that fight, Mendes' strengths are nothing like Aldo's strengths. Aldo does not have Mendes' strengths. Let's put it that way. I mean, in that fight, I feel like the reason Mendes was doing so well is because he was using his wrestling. He was dominating Conor on the ground. He was on top of Conor. That's not exactly Aldo's game, though.
Well, I'm not quite sure what you mean, because Aldo has excellent takedown skills. He's excellent at controlling people from the top, and even an excellent wrestler like Chad Mendes had trouble holding him down.
In every single one of his fights, the only fights where he didn't really actively seek the takedown
Was Mendes.
Mendes and Edgar,
Fair
two
enough.
high-level wrestlers. And if you think about it, like, that's smart. Two high-level wrestlers, why waste your energy doing that? You're better off striking
Striking on the feet.
and you're baiting them in.
Also, another quick note on Chad Mendes, who we both love, and we got to see him live, and he was freaking awesome. But Zahabi mentioned that, from what he heard, Chad Mendes was literally on a fishing trip when he got the phone call to go fight in that fight. And he said, go look at the numbers. There's a reason why, statistically, people with short notice generally lose. They're saving a card, but no one really expects them to win.
So you have that. And here's another big thing. Going into the fight originally, Conor was the underdog. So Conor kind of had this whole, like, world's against me. I believe in
Chip on your
myself.
shoulder.
If I lose, so what? I was supposed to this as a champion. But if I win, which I know I'm going to, go screw yourself, Aldo.
Right,
Like,
right.
I'm the best. This time around, he's going in. He's the favorite. He has more to lose than
According to
Aldo.
Vegas, he is, yeah.
I think according to Vegas, I think according to fans, even the UFC, like if you watch all these videos of like different UFC fighters' predictions, they're all going McGregor. And so he has that. And then the last thing, and this is not, Zahabi didn't bring this up, but this is just kind of like, I'm going to throw this in there. Ronda Rousey lost since then. Ronda Rousey was this brash, trash-talking,
yeah.
steamrolling through people and saying, no,
Transcendent outside the sport.
no
kind
one
of.
deserves to beat this.
Yeah.
And when she lost, the backlash on that was immense.
Yeah.
And to that point, Chael Sonnen actually said that he almost kind of feels like Conor is backtracking a little bit. So
I saw that.
This week, Conor made a comment. I feel like I don't know if we as the fans were supposed to interpret this as a dig at Aldo, and I assume it is a dig at Aldo. And he said that basically, like, you're not really a champion until like you've lost, right? Like,
I think it was a dig at Aldo.
Well, if that's how you see it, that dig doesn't make any sense to me.
Because one, it implies that Aldo has never lost.
He
Aldo
lost
has
one,
lost.
yeah.
He lost back in 2005 to Luciano Azevedo. And then the other thing is, it seems to also imply that the only reason why he hasn't lost is because he hasn't fought anyone that's any good. Well, he beat the then WEC champion Faber at the top of his game.
Yeah.
He beat a smooth striking Hominick. He beat Mendes twice. He beat Sung Jung. He beat Frankie Edgar, and he's beaten Lamas.
And he also beat,
Fox Sports correspondent Kenny Florian.
No, thank you. I was like, yeah.
So he's beaten everyone that the UFC has thrown at him. So I can kind of see Chael's point there when he's saying that maybe he's actually talking about himself. And it's like, well, if I lose, it's not a big deal because I lose and I'll come back stronger. But I think Conor, in the back of his mind, is now going, wait, I have more to lose this time around. In July, Aldo did. Aldo was the unbeaten guy. I
Right.
think this time around, McGregor has more to lose because
a lot of who he is as a person and a fighter is about talking trash and then backing it up. And what happens when he's talked the most trash and he doesn't back it up?
Well, so along those lines, I have a question for you. So, who has the most lose in this fight, Conor or the UFC? The UFC just lost. I mean, well, I say lost. Ronda Rousey just lost. One of the biggest UFC cash cows. Mm-hmm. Conor is the other. It's like 1A, 1B as far as cash cows, Ronda and Conor.
Yeah.
If Conor loses this, is the UFC like, oh damn?
No, because the UFC builds itself more like a league than it does boxing, which is very much so just an individual, like, this guy is big and people watch boxing because of this guy. I mean, they'd love for you to tune in because of Conor McGregor, but they want you to stay as a fan because of the UFC.
But don't you think they want like Conor to win?
Do I think that the UFC would prefer McGregor to win?
Well, that's kind of an obvious yes. I think so.
I think that's an obvious. I think
Aldo's been a horrible champion for that
if
way.
you're asking me if Dana White wants that to happen,
Oh, that's clearly a yes.
Aldo, it's kind of weird because he's just been dominant for so long. We just kind of think like, well, we're sort of like thinking this is like Weidman Silva, like this is the passing the torch. Aldo is like a year and a half older than McGregor.
Yeah.
I mean, he's just been fighting since he was like a teenager, just like McGregor did. But like he's just been dominating at every single top level that he's ever competed in. That we kind of forget that he's still young. I mean, he's still in his prime.
Yeah.
If he won this, if McGregor can't beat him, it's conceivable he owns the title for the next 5 years.
Yeah, because I mean, it's hard to see anyone else, at least currently in the division, who could beat him if Conor can't.
And you just said he's a bad champion. I want to talk about that for a little bit.
All right.
The greatest thing about the UFC, this is why I am such a huge fan of the UFC. I sit around during the summer and I see these off-season moves by my Houston Rockets, and I go, man, I really can't wait for basketball. And then, like, I don't know, I guess there are hockey fans out there like Suzanne, who when hockey season's not in, they like see a guy like hit puck and slap shots and ice skating, hockey terms, goalies. Power play. 3 periods instead of 4 quarters, like every other normal sport.
I'm pretty sure we just lost our entire Canadian listening audience.
No, we love George St. Pierre and Rory McDonald. Don't leave. But there's no off season for the UFC. That's what's so great. Every single season there is an epic fight that the UFC can put on.
Yeah.
It doesn't take any time off. The UFC always puts on promotions, and this makes you not look at the UFC in terms of it being a seasonal sport.
Right.
And the reason why this is important, if you were to tell me, oh, by the way, in the NFL, the same team has won the last 13, 14 Super Bowls.
Right.
You're kind of like, whoa, that's freaking crazy. Like, that's a crazy amount of dominance. In the UFC, that kind of happens, and it's just kind of like, well, yeah, he's a good champion. Like, he's owned it, but it doesn't put into perspective the way other sports do.
Right.
And that's what Aldo has done. For 10 years, he hasn't just been one of the best featherweights in the world. He has been the best featherweight in the world. And I think there's a lot of reasons why, like you said, he's a poor champion. He's definitely not a very popular champion.
Well, he's one of those guys. I feel like he doesn't try to sell the sport. I feel like that's one of the inherent jobs of being a champion, is to sell the sport.
I think it's their job to be ambassadors of the sport. I think that it makes financial sense for them to be able to sell themselves. And that's why you'll see guys like Michael Bisping make more than Demetrius Johnson and Chris Weidman.
To a David quote, and you said many colorful things about Aldo, but
Most can be repeated on this.
Now this is I'm gonna have to bleep myself in a second. But
But you've said
you're the UFC champion. Fucking learn English.
Seriously.
This guy is a quiet guy. He's an introverted guy. He's a family guy. You juxtapose this with Conor McGregor. He's driving around in Bugattis, BMWs. He just bought himself like this new Benz. It's pretty sweet. And then you go over and you look at Aldo. I mean, he has like a nice house. He lives like a very humble lifestyle.
It's very quiet.
He doesn't like the flashiness.
he's a poor kid from the favelas who his coaches once had to actually feed him because he couldn't afford to feed himself and train. And I believe those humble upbringings have always made him kind of uncomfortable with the glitz and flash, particularly the glitz and flash of Las Vegas.
Right?
No,
How many times has he backed out of
Vegas.
fights
He
in
hates
Vegas?
Vegas.
This is not a he doesn't like to fight in the U.S. He just particularly doesn't like Vegas. He's backed out of a couple fights from Vegas. He's fought a couple times in Texas. He's fought a bunch of times in California. He's fought a bunch of times in Colorado, New Jersey. He's fought all over. Vegas. This is as crazy as it is. A guy that has held the featherweight title of the world for 10 years has only fought in the fight capital of the world. This will be his third time ever to fight in Las Vegas. A guy like that makes him unpopular. Here's another thing that makes him unpopular. He holds himself back in fights. In fact, one of the biggest complaints that people have from him is it seems like he could end people, but instead he kind of takes the foot off the gas pedal. We've seen this against Chad Mendes, where it looked like he had flurries where he could have finished Mendes, and then he sort of stopped, and then Mendes was able to recover, take him down. He was good at recovering and getting back up. And when I talk about the way he fights, I will submit that he he doesn't fight like that because he doesn't have killer instinct. He fights like that because that's just his style of fighting. He picks his spots.
That makes sense.
He is what I like to call a precision power striker. He doesn't throw punches and bunches. Conor McGregor paces the UFC in how many strikes he throws a minute.
I think it's like, hold up.
Oh, you got the stats.
5.44 strikes landed per minute.
Okay, you got all those stats.
Aldo is 3.29.
Yeah.
So basically, more than 2 strikes per minute more landed, not just thrown, landed.
When you have a guy that sort of conserves himself like that, especially against seemingly overmatched opponents, that doesn't really endear you to the fans.
Yeah.
But what it does is it does ensure that you're a champion for a long time. Another guy another guy that we've seen do this and was, and probably still is considered the best welterweight ever, George St. Pierre. And Zahabi actually went into this. He said that guys that fight like that, they do it methodically, and they're doing it because they're there to win. Guys like that, the thing in their mind is, if I overextend myself right now to try to finish this guy that I'm clearly better than, he gets an opportunity to do the one thing he can possibly do to beat me, and that's throw that lucky knockout punch.
Right.
George St. Pierre got careless, had that happen to him against Matt Serra. And so you see that, and I think guys like that, they're like, no, I don't want to put myself in that position. Here's the thing about this fight. Aldo's not going to have a choice because Conor is going to pressure. Here are some of the things that I see as keys to the fight. One, anyone that's ever seen a Jose Aldo fight, you go away with this one thing. Man, you do not want to get leg kicked by this dude.
Your legs would be twice the size after the fight than they were before the fight, after fighting Aldo.
Okay, so one, a southpaw like Conor McGregor isn't ideal for an orthodox fighter like Aldo to use his weapon, the leg kick.
Right.
That doesn't mean that he can't use the leg kick. He actually demolished Kenny Florian, who's also a southpaw, using the leg kick. When you're throwing it from the orthodox position, you're actually hitting the inside of the thigh. You're throwing that inside leg kick versus hitting the outside of the lead leg against another orthodox fighter. It doesn't mean that he can't actually set up those strikes, and it doesn't mean that Conor McGregor is necessarily going to be in the southpaw stance the entire fight. We've seen Conor McGregor switch stances all the time to set up his strikes.
The key for Aldo is to throw that leg kick low and to avoid that check, which is very easy to do from the southpaw position.
We've said that he likes to kind of calculate you a little bit the way Anderson Silva does, and then he kind of throws in flurries. His head movement and defense, I think, it's not just world class, it's possibly the best we've ever seen in the UFC. And I think this is going to be key when it comes to their striking battle. I think that both Conor and Aldo are excellent strikers. I think Aldo is an excellent defender against stand-up striking. Mm-hmm. I think McGregor is average.
Yeah, it's not exactly his forte. He's never had to be a good stand-up defender.
Well, I don't know if it's that he hasn't had to be good. I think that part of his style of being a pressure fighter is playing on his chin. He's been tagged with the right hook in every single one of his fights in the UFC. Holloway's been able to do it against him. Seaver was able to hit him with that.
Brimage did too, didn't he?
Brimage was able to do it.
Brando tagged him.
So Mendes was able to do it quite a few times.
Yeah.
And that's because...
that's just the name of the game with pressure fighting. But Conor's also doing it purposefully because he's setting up traps.
Conor does something that's very unique, and that is, as a southpaw fighter, he doesn't put his lead leg, he doesn't make sure that the lead leg is outside the lead leg of his opponent. The reason why most southpaw fighters do that is because that means that you are in line with your straight or your cross. So as soon as that guy comes at you, their head is lined up so you can throw it at your right. He actually keeps his leg inside, which sort of looks like he gives the outside angle to his opponent. Now, he does that because he knows that he can use his range and his deceptive quickness to be able to trap them, bring them in, and like we said, use this combination flying knee or a roundhouse and then hit you with that straight. Against Aldo, that's going to be really tricky because when you allow Aldo to get into the pocket like that, Aldo can throw, he doesn't throw punches and bunches for majority of the rounds, but he can throw punches in bunches every once in a while.
And he has deceptive power too.
And when he does, he's throwing with a lot of power.
I'll call it right now, but the defining moment in this fight will be the first time Aldo cracks McGregor. How is McGregor going to respond to that? How McGregor responds to that is going to dictate the fight, and it'll dictate the champion's strategy for the duration of the match. Now, we've talked about how McGregor has a bunch of tricks up his sleeve. The champion also has a few tricks up his sleeve as well.
And he's hiding a lot of stuff. He has a great hook. He has probably, once again, I say he has the best defense. He may have the best jab in the game too. And then just crazy power in his kicks. And he has both head kicks and those devastating leg kicks.
It's really going to test Conor's chin and fortitude.
And both these fighters have shown that they can take a wallop.
Yeah, they can.
The thing about Conor is that's part of his strategy, is he sort of does take that punch, to throw a punch. Can he take too many of those from Aldo? Another thing that Aldo does so well, he doesn't throw the unorthodox style punches that McGregor does to get people off their feet. What he does is he mixes up the pacing of his punches. So he throws very, very basic punches. He just throws them beautifully with crazy precision and crazy power. And then he kind of throws them a little off time. So he'll throw a double jab at you, or he'll kind of like mix it off half beat and kind of just throw off your timing a little bit. So you're not going to see these like crazy autobahns or something like that from an Aldo. Doesn't mean that he won't be able to crack you with something with a little trickery of his own, but it's not going to be the flashy Conor McGregor style where he kind of comes out wide. He has these spinning kicks, gets you off balance, and just sort of like destroys you with these strikes. It's more subtle, and it's going to be in the pocket, and he's going to be able to gauge your timing, and then he's going to kind of throw offbeat punches. Another thing that he does really well, and this is a Dutch kickboxing move, but he does the liver shot punch to kick combination.
Yeah.
And he sets this up by using a lot of head movement and feints, and he does it really, really well.
It's smooth.
So
when he pulls that,
once again, to your point, Conor is going to have to really balance out in this fight, being a pressure fighter, but also using this length and distance, because you get too close and you start playing with fire, man.
It can be dangerous in the pocket with Aldo, man.
It's going to be.
It's like what 23 guys have discovered already.
Looking at the fight stats, they both have knockout power and they both have crazy chin. So the one thing that I think could be a difference maker is if Aldo can somehow take the fight to the ground. We've seen some weaknesses there.
By the Irishman?
I think that he's gonna have to at least try some takedowns at some point.
Aldo
McGregor, to throw him off his game, if not to actually like take the fight
Just
to the
to make him
ground.
think about it.
And once on top, I think he actually has quite the advantage there. He's
Excuse me. It is true. We haven't really seen much of McGregor on his back, and against Mendes, it wasn't exactly pretty. So it is. I mean, as far as I've seen, it is a pretty big hole in McGregor's game, fighting off his back. But then, I mean, he has a BJJ brown belt, so.
like Aldo probably won't want to fight from distance against McGregor. McGregor probably isn't going to want to fight against a guy who... This is another thing about Aldo. You know, before he even did MMA, he was beating some of the top guys in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So he may also... his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu game is top-notch.
Yeah.
He's the complete package.
There's a reason he hasn't lost in 10 years.
He is the complete package. He doesn't really have any weaknesses in striking. He doesn't really have any...
Most of his weaknesses are more of the conceptual variety. Like, he's older than McGregor, has more wear and tear than McGregor. Maybe the last few fights we haven't seen the same hunger out of Aldo. One thing we have been able to see opponents do on Aldo is pressure and wear him down.
McGregor's really going to have to be able to pressure him up against the cage and wear out the champion that way. I'm hearing a lot of things about, hey, McGregor's never gone 5 rounds. I don't like. Is he gonna have the gas tank to do it? You never know. You don't know if a guy has championship.
25 minutes is a long time.
You don't know if a guy has that, but if you were to ask me, I would say probably no problem. McGregor looks like a beast, and it's not like he hasn't gotten later into the rounds because he's getting tired. He's not getting later into the rounds because he's finishing dudes.
Yeah.
You know, he doesn't have to use it, so we haven't seen it. So can I tell you that he's going to look fresh? No, but probably he is. I mean, everything I've heard is this guy's an athletic freak.
Oh yeah, he is. Like, you just watch some of his training videos, and it's insane. But I guess McGregor's longest fight was his fight against Max Holloway, which went to decision. He won by unanimous decision. But he tore his ACL like in the first round or something, and that's why he couldn't finish the fight. Or that's why he couldn't finish Holloway, because he tore his ACL in the first round, and then fought the rest of the fight and won decisively.
Yeah. There's so many compelling things just from a fight standpoint. But of course, the reason why people are watching is the gamesmanship.
Yes.
And Conor, game, set, and match, has owned the mind games for the entirety of their world tour, the press conferences, every time they do something. I will say this. I don't think that this is having the same effect that Sonnen had on Silva.
No.
I think what you've heard from Aldo, and again to your point why some people may have said he could have been a little bit more of a killer as a champion, when he gets the name of a fighter and he doesn't think that guy's that good, he doesn't really push himself. We've heard that this is a guy that doesn't necessarily push himself in training camps. McGregor, it doesn't matter. They could say Viet Duan is the next guy you're going to fight against. He's going to be in the gym every single day training his butt off 100%. That's just the only speed he knows how to go at. I think he kind of woke the giant a little bit with all this pushing.
Aldo's pissed.
And what's awesome is we may be seeing the best Aldo we've ever seen. This is going to be such an epic fight because I know McGregor is his confidence is supreme. When he says he can beat Aldo, he knows he can beat Aldo. But I think he poked he poked the champion a little. Yeah. And I think what we're gonna see this Saturday is the best Aldo. And so there should be. I mean, whoever wins this fight, that's boom. That's a stamp. There's no, this isn't the best Aldo. McGregor didn't beat the best. McGregor beat the best Aldo. He may not have beaten the best Aldo back in July, because I think back then he was still just kind of he was this big trash talking prospect. After he beat Mendes, after all of this stuff that has happened, this guy is fighting the best Aldo. And I forgot who brought it up, but one of the big changes that you've noticed from Aldo, and you can interpret this how I would like to actually hear your insight on it. Aldo doesn't like to look at people in the eyes during stare downs.
Right.
He says it's because Aldo's explanation was he respects every single fighter. He feels like if he looks into your eyes, it's like you're gonna have to tell the other person that I'm gonna hurt you. And he doesn't want to do that. He says that he wants to respect all the athletes, so he doesn't like to look in anyone's eyes when they fight them. He's always done that. If you can go back and look at every single one of his weigh-ins, he could be going against a chump like Kenny Florian. He doesn't want to look him in the eye. It's always very respectful. He's very amicable. He'll usually shake your hand and then leave. He's looked Conor straight in the eye every single time they've had a stare down.
Yeah.
And people think that Conor was antagonizing Aldo. Actually, to start off the press tour, Aldo went over, waved at the fans, went over to shake McGregor's hand, and flipped him off.
Yeah.
So this is a fired up Aldo. He is just as fired up as McGregor is.
He actually dislikes Conor.
Yeah.
Conor's trash talk got under his skin, and Aldo actively dislikes Conor and actively wants to hurt him.
So how do you see this playing out? Do you think that's actually going to mess with him and maybe mess with Aldo?
Actually, I don't think it's something Aldo's used to. And this time he actively despises the guy he's fighting, and I don't think he's used to doing those kind of emotions inside the octagon. And I think it does mess with him.
All right, call it. How's the fight ending?
Conor TKO round 3.
I think it goes to decision, and I see the champion taking it.
Really? All right, man. All right. Bet a shot.
All right. I think either way, this is gonna be a great fight. I can't. We're geeking out. Like
Yeah, I can't-
as a fight fan, you should be geeking out.
We should have plans already.
Every MMA fan across the globe should be so geeked out. This is one of the biggest MMA fights I can think of for a while. The biggest in this weight class of all time. This is just a crazy awesome fight. I think that Aldo is an amazing champion. I think that maybe he hasn't pushed himself a lot, and I think that we're gonna see the absolute best Aldo. And if you haven't fallen in love with McGregor already, go watch one of his highlight reels. Go watch one of his trash talk reels. I mean, it is impossible. Like, you can hate him, you can love him, but you will have an opinion about Conor McGregor.
Exactly.
It's impossible.
There is no gray area. It's black and white.
It is impossible not to have an emotional response, and it's impossible to not watch him and not go, I'm gonna buy his next pay-per-view.
Yeah. Highlights all
He's
day.
that kind of guy. I don't want to talk too much about it. This was mainly a Conor Aldo thing.
Right.
Do you just want to bring up Weidman Rockhold, because we're such big fans of both of them? And once again, I think we're going to be on opposite sides of the fence on this one. I'm picking Weidman to retain his title. Once again, though, I love Rockhold. The guy is awesome. Quickly, just brief summary. Break down Rockhold's game real quick for our listeners.
So Rockhold is very, very skilled in basically every aspect of the game. I mean, he's I guess you'd say primarily a stand-up fighter. He throws strong Kicks, leg kicks, body kicks, head kicks, and throws them with like some crazy speed for someone who's 185 pounds. But then he's also very strong in the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu area of the game. I mean, he has a lot of submissions under his belt. But his bread and butter, honestly, is his stand-up and his kicks. How this plays with Weidman will be interesting, just because Weidman is such a talented wrestler. Weidman needs to watch out though, because Rockhold is very strong off his back. And he's a dangerous fighter fighting off his back.
I think he's. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought you said he was a stand. I thought he actually started out as a jiu-jitsu guy.
Okay, yes. When he first came into the UFC, he was a jiu-jitsu guy.
So he is with
AKA
American Kickboxing Academy.
I was like,
he's got some talented training partners.
Watching that embedded. Hey, if you're training for wrestling, you could do much worse than a Daniel Cormier.
I know. Yeah, his training partner is Daniel Cormier. People.
If Daniel Cormier is trying his best to hold you down and you can consistently get back up from it, you're gonna be okay.
Yeah.
It's
Cormier's a big boy and best wrestler in UFC.
I thought it was really funny. I bring up these guys. Chris Weidman is the new George St. Pierre. He's this blue collar. Dana White gave me a call. He said, I'm going to fight this guy. And then I fight this guy. In many ways, he's kind of like Aldo in that. He's like very quiet, very family guy. Doesn't want to he doesn't like trash talking. Doesn't make waves. Doesn't do anything. Luke Rockhold has been calling out for forever, trying to get under his skin. I don't think he's necessarily succeeding.
Yeah, I don't think Weidman cares. He's like, whatevs.
You know what I find really funny? I'm watching that embedded. Aldo sort of insinuated that McGregor, he was going to have the advantage over McGregor because he says McGregor distracts himself with that lifestyle. He's like, he doesn't have a family to go home. I train and then I go into my family. And I spend time with my kids and my wife, and then I go to sleep, and then I wake up and I train. I don't have any distractions. It grounds me, and they support me, and it makes me a better fighter because I'm fighting for them. He fights for that glory and that money and all that glitz and fame. It distracts him. And he's talking about all this stuff that life being distracted. And I thought that was really funny because Luke Rockhold basically said the opposite. He was like, I don't have a family like Chris Weidman distracting me.
I can train all the time I want.
I don't have to change diapers in between sparring sessions.
Right.
Yeah. I thought that was so funny. I was like, I guess whatever you need to have that mental edge, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, he has a quiet family home. I mean, that's totally distracting.
Lame.
I love how they asked Chris Weidman and Weidman trying so hard to
try some trash talk.
Talk. And he was like, what did he say? Yeah, I hope the fans remember that come December 12th. I was like, oh, Weidman.
He tried.
Can you go and just tell him that he has a big melon for his head?
Oh, yes, please.
He has a cantaloupe
Please.
for his head. If those of you that aren't recognizing that reference, Uriah Faber tried to
Also a horrible trash
also a
talker.
horrible trash talker. Just an all around. He seems like such a cool guy, though.
He's too nice of a guy to be
Too nice of a guy to be a trash talker. McGregor was just like decimating him on Tough. And he comes back and he was like, "Oh, are cantaloupes the official import of Ireland?" And McGregor's like,
What are you talking about?
"What the hell are you talking about?" He's like, "Yeah, because your head, it's big, like a cantaloupe." I feel like that's kind of what Chris Weidman has on Rockhold.
basically his style
You watch
of
like
wrestling.
Rockhold, and Rockhold's like, "You think you're gonna stop me? I'm gonna stomp you. Everything that you can do, I can do better. Your one thing is wrestling. I'm good at wrestling. You're not good at striking. I'm amazing at striking. I'm gonna go in there. I'm gonna finish you." And Weidman's like, "Well, we'll see about that."
December 12th.
December
tune in.
12th. I think he said something, and it was actually kind of. He meant it as trash talk, but it almost came off like really endearing. He was like, "I don't want my kids to say, and champion Luke Rockhold. I want them to say, and champion Dad." I was like, "Oh, is that the best trash talk?"
Champion Weidman, you're adorable.
You're adorable, Weidman. All right, I think we're gonna have to end it. Our wives are kicking us out because they're. What is this? Some model show or
Yeah,
something?
Victoria's Secret fashion.
Victoria's Secret fashion and like then
I
something.
would like to point out that we are two straight males who are upset
Two
to watch TV,
straight
to watch
males
a bunch of women walk
talking
on the
about
runway in
like
lingerie.
yeah, two straight guys just talking about dudes like stripped down and like grind on top of each other about the manliest thing you
Well,
can do.
they're not always stripped down. They were boxers.
Oh.
Muay Thai shorts or whatever you want to call them.
Valtudo.
Valtudo, thank you. I was like, crap, starts with a V. They were Viet shorts.
Beard shorts. yeah, that's good. Yeah, David making the distinction. He's made that mistake before. He was like, "Oh man, I watched this fight the other day. It was really interesting." And I was like, "Oh wait, that was Pornhub, not Fight Pass." All right, guys. If we haven't hyped you up enough already, if all this build-up hasn't hyped you up enough already, we have no idea why you've been listening to this. Then, have you?
Sorry.
But if you're like a normal person, you should be very, very excited. Tune in, watch it. I know we are, and we're gonna have a fight breakdown after
sir.
after it happens. This is gonna be big, really crazy. All right, guys. Until next time, we are
The Bros, you knows.